Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us this morning for our webinar, Embracing Change During the Period of Cloud Transformation. This is your Quisitive ERP team on the call today. Jeff Bonasek is our Principal Solutions Architect, and he will be the presenter. My name is Michelle Chesser, and I am one of the Customer Account Managers here at Quisitive, along with Marian Hartka and Angela Gillis. Our presenter today is Jeff Bonasek. Jeff has 30 years of experience in ERP systems and is certified in Dynamics GP, Dynamics SL, Business Central, Sage Intacct, and Uninet. This is our agenda today. We'll be reviewing the Microsoft product roadmap along with its implications and challenges. We'll review our approach to embracing change with a customer-centric focus. Jeff will introduce you to both Business Central and Sage Intacct and review the benefits and features of these cloud ERPs. We'll provide some details on our FastPath program, have some time for Q&A, then we'll finish with next steps. And now, without further delay, I will turn this over to Jeff. Jeff, you can take it away.
Thank you, Michelle, and good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Let's go ahead and dive right on in. Let's start with a discussion about Dynamics SL. So I know some of you are Dynamics SL customers and some of you are Dynamics GP customers. So this is a roadmap. This is the last roadmap that Microsoft had put together for Microsoft Dynamics SL. And one thing you'll note is that beyond 2019, there's not a lot of information out there. And the reason why there is not a lot of information out there is that Microsoft has decided to sunset Dynamics SL. So starting the very beginning of this year, January 9th, 2024, Microsoft ended mainstream support for Dynamics SL. And that means not being the mainstream support, there'll no longer be any updates to Dynamics SL. There'll be no more additional releases, updates, or service packs, no enhancements to the product moving forward from this date forward. However, SL is now going to go into a mode or support mode called extended support. And extended support is a support through your standard support plan that will release patches and updates related to security. So Microsoft, if they determine that some aspect of Dynamics SL has a security flaw or a breach that needs to be resolved, they will release updates for that to keep that product safe and secure for you. But there will be no more updates from this point forward. Now, what's going to happen from this point forward? Well, Dynamics SL is going to continue to keep on running for you. If you are running SL at this moment in time, you will, you've been running SL for quite some time now. You probably don't have any outstanding issues with the product. It will continue to run as long as the servers that SL is on will continue to run. And we will continue to support you in Dynamics SL as long as we possibly can as well. So it's not like the end of the product is happening immediately, but it is time to consider in moving on to what your next phase or next ERP solution is. That means that support, by the way, for extended support will extend through July 11th of 2028. Beyond that, then there will be no more security patches, and that product will be completely in a life end mode from a Microsoft standpoint. So again, we'll continue to support it. Those risks associated with Microsoft in its life end phase, no additional users of modules. So if you need to grow it, I can't do that anymore. There'll be no 1099 updates for this year, 2024. No payroll updates if you're on a payroll for 2024. Support costs, we'll continue to support you, but as those costs increase, we'll have to increase our costs for support for you as well. But rest assured, we will continue to support you as long as we possibly can. So in summary, SL is in its life end phase. We'll talk a little bit about why it's in its life end phase in a moment here. You're now in this extended support, and now it's time to consider moving to somewhere else. And that's what this webinar is all about. For those of you that are using Microsoft Dynamics GP, this is a listing of the roadmap for Dynamics GP. Dynamics GP is currently in something we call the modern life cycle. So Microsoft has announced that support going forward for GP will require you to be on the modern life cycle product, which is a certain version of GP moving forward. Essentially, this is GP 2018 R2 or better. So only updates will come out from this point forward for those versions. Microsoft has announced a life-ending phase for GP, but that roadmap is a little further out. The runway is a little bit further out. On April 1st, Microsoft will stop selling it as a new product to any new existing customers. Although they'll continue sales to existing customers, but any new customers will not be able to purchase Microsoft Dynamics GP. You will, of course, be able to continue to have support for GP and be able to add feature functionality to your GP system if you own it at that moment in time. For many years, Microsoft has not announced a specific life-ending date for GP, but they've said that they envision support through 2028. So where SL life end starts in 2024, for GP, that's going to start in 2028, and that's what our expectation is. Again, modern lifecycle policy means you need to be on 2018 R2 or better. There was a recent release of 18.6 that came out in October of 2023, and you want to ensure that you get on the latest and greatest version so that you will be on the most secure and the latest version of Dynamics GP. So again, no new customer sales in summary beyond 2026, and expecting that life end sometime in 2028. So what next? Microsoft sunsetted Dynamics SL. There's a clear path for that in Dynamics GP. What next? This is a quote from an American screenwriter, Norman Lear, that I'm quite fond of. And it just talks about when things are over, they're over, and it's time to move on to the next. So what next for us? Well, let's take a quick look at the history of where we've been with ERP accounting solutions and where we are going, and then we can discuss what your options are moving forward. So in looking at the automation of ERP, started with mainframes. This really took hold 50s and 60s and 70s. And this was a true boon to the accounting industry, the ability to automate the capturing of accounting records and produce financial reports from those systems. However, as you know, the mainframes were fairly costly and required a team of engineers to maintain. And so in the 80s in earnest, the technology industry introduced the personal computer to us, which liberated many of us as accountants to be able to run applications without needing a mainframe hardware to do so. And also very quickly, many of our accounting systems became available on that PC platform. That grew fairly quickly and then moved into what we call client server mode, where you could have multiple PCs all sharing an accounting system so that an office could effectively operate their accounting system. However, those networks were fairly tenuous. Having installed many of those, they broke down quite often, didn't always work the way you wanted them to. And so very quickly in the 90s, we moved to a hosted environment. And hosted environment took basically that same architecture that was developed in the 70s and 80s, client server architecture, but moved it to the cloud, moved it to a hosted solution. Maybe that was Amazon, maybe it was Microsoft Azure, maybe it was a private cloud like we have here at Quisitive, a cloud that's designed specifically for your GP or SL systems. And it took off the burden of needing to maintain the platform for these systems to run upon. But they were still at their heart client server applications. It gave you anywhere, anytime access, meaning if you had access to the internet, you'd be able to gain access to the system. And it freed up the need to maintain and support those. And many of our customers have us maintain and support their systems. But in their heart, these are client server systems that were really designed in the 70s, put together in the 80s, and we've been running since. In the early 2000s, there was an introduction of a new platform, and that's our multi-tenant cloud solution. These are ERP systems that are built directly for the cloud or the internet. And they're built taking the best of what we learned from client-server technology and extending that beyond in providing feature functionality. So when is the best time to migrate to the cloud? Well, this transition in earnest has really started in the year 2000. It picked up steam in the 2010s. It is a full-fledged force moving through the industry today. So many of our customers are now thinking about what their next solution is going to be, especially given the fact that Microsoft has sunset SL and announced a timeline for GP as well. So when is the best time to migrate? We think now is the best time to migrate. These cloud-based solutions really take the best of what we've learned over the last 30 years to provide great functionality. So this is some of the benefits that our customers are telling us about what cloud-based technologies provide to them. And so I'm just going to share a couple of these for you so you have that to take back with you. So the first is that a cloud-based solution typically the pricing model, or excuse me, total cost of ownership is improved because the pricing model is really built on a subscription basis. When you think about what it takes to maintain your client-server type solutions, there's a lot of costs that sit below the waterline, just like on this iceberg over here. And those costs are things like hardware, the IT personnel to maintain that, maintenance, upgrades. Anybody who's doing an upgrade or GPRSL knows that we don't do these every year because they're fairly complicated. We got to make sure all third-party products work with it. And so quite often it takes a month or two to be able to do an upgrade to make sure that everything is going to work when we get there. And then your software cost, that annual fee that you pay every year, is really the smallest part of your overall cost of the system. What cloud-based solutions do is they turn that upside down, where your annual subscription cost is really the major cost that you need to consider. Things like upgrades happen automatically, so you don't need to think about pricing in a major upgrade once every 3 years. You don't need to think about changing out your hardware and buying new hardware once every 3 years, or having IT staff maintain those servers, doing backups. All that is replaced by a subscription model. And so what we believe is that brings your total cost of ownership down and makes those costs predictable. One other thing that we've begun to notice, or another thing that we begin to notice with respect to these cloud solutions, is that they've taken the best of what we've learned over the past 30 years from client-server solutions and applied to it the best of what we learned about operating in the cloud, in the world of the cloud. And what that really gets down to is how difficult is it to use or operate the piece of software. You know, somebody once asked me, who taught me how to order a product through Amazon? And the answer is nobody. I logged on to Amazon, I kind of bopped around, and I figured out what I needed to do to be able to make a purchase. And that site is fairly straightforward, and it's not just Amazon, it's any site that you may operate via the cloud. And that's the feeling and experience that our users are seeing with cloud-based solutions, to intuitively have an understanding of what it is they need to do. Yes, there's still some training involved in it, but the systems that we came from were fairly complex, with lots of pieces that were added along the way. And it took time to train our customers on how to use these systems properly. With cloud-based solutions, we're finding that our customers can adapt to these much more quickly and intuitively understand how much of it functions. And that really talks about a reduced implementation cost. It reduces the amount of time it takes for us to implement that, a reduced cost for you as well. And it is intuitive and easy to use. So that's what we're seeing in cloud-based solutions. That helps turn what we think are variable costs into fixed costs. So no more do you have to think about, well, I got to replace the hardware every 3 years and I have to do an upgrade. So I'm going to have to determine what those costs are going to be and work that into my budget. Instead, that's all replaced with an annual fee for subscription of the software. And you know that fee is going to be every year. And those upgrades are done automatically. Now, when I say they're done automatically, it really is that simple. Meaning, when upgrades happen with our two products, Business Central or Sage Intacct, we're going to talk a little bit later, that is scheduled to happen, and it generally happens on a Sunday evening. And you as the end user are notified when you log in on Monday morning and you get a notification that, hey, we upgraded the system over the weekend. Now, we were able to do that because these systems integrate with the greater ecosystem using application programming interfaces, or what we call APIs. And those APIs are guaranteed to be backwardly compatible. So no more do we need to test the integration of all the applications that you're using in conjunction with the ERP. When we upgrade, those integrations will all happen automatically as well, will be supported because we are backwardly compatible. And that means that now I can do an upgrade for you, giving you new feature functionality, keeping up with the changes happening in the industry on a quarterly basis, and we do. So all of our customers are on the same version of Business Central, or in the same versions of Sage Intacct. It's easier for us to support. That means you always have the latest and greatest and all the updates, and that's beneficial. So in looking and transitioning from your current client server or on-premises solution, we have this methodology that is proven for us, developed by our many years of implementation, refined with some of the manufacturers, Intacct and Microsoft, and it looks a little bit like this. We first start by evaluating your current system, GPRSL. We're experts in GPRSL. So we know exactly how you have configured it. We, in fact, probably helped you configure it. And we can understand what is working for that. And you can also share with us what's not working well, or what you're looking to accomplish in the coming years. So if you're going to migrate to a new system, we want to build that system for the next 10 years and of how your business will operate. Quite often, these systems that I've worked on, we implemented in the 80s and 90s, designed for their business in the 80s and 90s. And that our business may have changed, or we need to adapt to it. So we have an opportunity here to reset and design the system specifically to how we need to operate now and move forward. Once we get an agreement on that, then we build a test environment and a production environment. Now, the test environment, some people call sandbox, is a place for us to test out the designs, test out integration, test data conversion, all the other good stuff. We do help you with data conversion, and we're experts in GPRSL, so we can help migrate that data for you without loss of historical data. So you can do year-over-year reporting, trend reporting, and so on and so forth. And so we use our test or our sandbox implementation environment to do that testing. Once we completely configure and set that up, we'll then train your end users, and then we'll take them through a user acceptance testing. This is really where a stage in which they get to test their skills on how well they've learned it, how the application, how well they can operate the system, and get in preparation for going live. Then we do all the phases for go live, which is to copy all those configurations over into production, get all the data over, get your vendors, your customers, your historical data over, and then bring you live. And our goal is to bring you live through one entire cycle. Read that as one entire month-end close. So we're there to support you for the first month and then take you through the month-end close all the way through producing financial reports and reports for consumers. And just as in the past with GPRSL, our relationship with you remains on a support basis where we can continue to support you. We'll keep you up to date with quarterly updates, what's new happening with the software, and continue to engage with you to help you maximize the use of your investment. So this is our implementation. We call it our fast path implementation. So this is a favorite quote of mine from Darwin about technology change. You know, I love SL and GP. I grew up on SLGP. We helped a lot of organizations do really good things for their mission using SL and GP, and they grew their businesses, and we grew our businesses on SL and GP. But honestly, when I look at it, SL and GP is really dated in its structure and design. and it does not have the capabilities to take us to the next generation. Those things that are changing the industry, that we're going to go through, like artificial intelligence, machine learning, these products just don't have the capability of doing so. And that's part of the reason why Microsoft is sunsetting it, is that they need to focus their energies on the next generation technologies to bring to bear all that feature functionality that's really going to change our industry. It is time to consider. If you've had your GP or SL system, chances are you've had it for 5 or 10 or 15 years, and it served you well. It's time to consider what the next solution is going to be for your next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. So to that end, let's talk a little bit about 2 products that are that we work with for our customers. The first is a product called Microsoft Dynamics Business Central. This is a cloud-based solution, so it's delivered via the cloud, sits inside of Microsoft's Azure environment, and is integrated into the greater Microsoft environment. It has a modern interface, again, taking advantage of all the ease of use functionality and personalization for each user. It has a series of financial reporting tools and lots of third-party financial reporting tools that are all available to you to produce whatever report you might need to by program, department, product line, whatever you might necessarily need to do so. It works off of, and in fact, most of the solutions we're looking at today work off of a natural account and then a dimensional based structure, but beyond that. So we'll talk about that a little bit, but both systems use this. And in fact, almost all the cloud solutions that I've seen are switching. So for those of you that you are using Dynamics SL, this is the combination of the account and the sub-account. Now becomes account and dimensions. For those of you that are using GP, this is a combination of your chart of accounts, which has a natural segment in it, and then it's got sub-accounts built into it. That transitions to an account and a dimensional basis. Business Central strengths are in general accounting, with particularly strong strengths in distribution and warehousing. Also, its strengths is in integrating into the greater Microsoft ecosystem. When I say the greater Microsoft ecosystem, I'm talking about Power BI, which is a tool many of our customers use to visualize their data from ERP systems and other systems as well. I'm talking about Microsoft CRM. So if you're using the Microsoft Dynamics CRM, integration with it is tightly integrated inside of Business Central, as well as the other tools out there like Microsoft Flow and other tools as well. So the product sitting on top of the Azure platform uses the benefits of all the tools that are available to the Microsoft platform and environment, and it's particularly strong in that. A second product that we would want you to consider is a product called Sage Intacct. Now, Sage is the world's largest accounting software manufacturer. Many folks don't know that because they think of it as somebody else. They think of it as maybe MAS 90, which is a Sage product. Now they call it Sage 100 or Sage 300, I should say. Maybe they think of it as best fixed assets. Again, that's part of Sage as well. So they're an organization that has many different products and the largest accounting software manufacturer in the world. Sage Intacct is one of their product lines. Sage Intacct was developed in the early 2000s, released right around then, and from the very beginning conceived as a cloud-only type solution in a multi-tenant environment. Now, when I say multi-tenant environment, that means that all the users are really inside the same environment. So when they do an upgrade, everybody gets upgraded all at the same time. It has a series of core feature functionality, which some of which are listed here. And then it uses a best of breed approach that integrating with other systems should be made available by creating easy to use and open APIs, which Sage Intacct has. One of its strengths is this concept of multi-tenancy. And that is the idea of creating a single tenant. Think of it as a single container under which you build multiple entities. And those entities can share things together like charts of accounts, like dimensions, if you want to, customers and vendors, and so on and so forth. So if you've got multiple entities that should be structured together because you do consolidations, then Sage Intacct is one of the tools that you might want to take a look at. The way that it works is quite interesting, using a single container and sharing. We call it multi-entity shared. In addition, it's got very strong financial report writing capabilities, and a series of dashboards that are available to you. Now, Sage has a unique distinction in that they built the system with series of templates depending on whatever your industry is. So, for example, there's a nonprofit, there's a professional services template, and that means that you get out of the box a series of financial reports that are already built for your industry using best practices within inside that industry, and then you adapt your chart of accounts to fit inside that framework, so you get that pull through with all those configurations and setups. So that's a little bit about their quick starts, nonprofits templates, for example, as one, and professional services. Also, Sage traditionally has integrated with Salesforce quite well. So many of our customers that are using Salesforce are looking at a product like Sage because of its integration capabilities from that. Developed in the Silicon Valley of the USA, always have had close ties with Salesforce and the Salesforce engineers. And so, in fact, there's some tools that we share between Sage Intacct and Salesforce. So super tight integration there. Sage is quite proud of the fact that they are the recommended solution by the AICPA. There's only one product that AICPA has recommended, and that's Sage Intacct. And that's given its design, the way it works, and its familiarity with the policies and procedures necessary. I don't want to say policies and procedures, but given its the way that it works in conforming to accounting principles. So Sage is quite proud of that, and is something that's worth considering as well. So let's talk a little bit more about dimensions, because I did describe that both these systems use dimensions in the way that they code transactions. And it's a little bit of a revolutionary idea, but you'll find it across the board with all cloud-based solutions. So a dimension is a way to add granularity to a transaction, meaning every transaction I code, I'm going to code it to an account and something else. In SL, we call it sub-accounts. With inside a GP, it's an account string that has other elements that define it. And those definitions are things like departments, locations, programs, grants, things like that. That's what dimensions are. So a good way to think about this is the sub-accounts you have in SL today, or the sub-accounts that make up your chart of account number in GP, get translated over into dimensions. That's part of what we help you do, is to figure out which dimensions work best for you. And then how would you translate that into Business Central or Sage Intacct? Those dimensions give you a granularity about where a transaction may have taken place, like companies, entities, or locations within inside of those entities, north, south, east, west, divisions within a company, or programs that you're tracking, or departments or grants. Dimensions allow you to code transactions to that. And these dimensions flow down into the general ledger, which now gives you the ability to report off of these dimensions by a financial report, using a financial report in the general ledger. So for example, if you're a project-driven organization, the project dimension gets populated as you receive expenses or produce invoices and revenues against that project, that flows into the general ledger. And I can do a project P&L in the general ledger because that dimension is carried all the way down to the general ledger. Now, seems like a simple concept, but when I think about what we did in SL and what we did in GP, a lot of that dimensionality got lost when it landed into the general ledger. So I had to go back to the subledger. I had to go back to the projects. I had to go back to the AP to find more detail about this transaction. I couldn't write a financial report about vendors in the GL. I had to go back to AP. But in these systems, that all carries down into the general ledger. And what that means is that the general ledger is a lot different than it used to be in the past. Somebody once best said it to me, and they described it this way. They said the general ledger is no longer general. It's very detailed, and it in fact is. If you think about it, when you flow that level of detail into the general ledger, that provides you a whole lot more power with respect to reporting. And the reason why is because every one of my customers is very comfortable in running a financial report. That's the business they're in. That's what they do. They're very comfortable with that. And if they have the ability to run a financial report by vendor or by employee, by program, they could probably do that fairly straightforward. But if you ask them to write a crystal report about vendors in AP, that would be challenging for many of my customers. Crystal is a report writing tool really designed for programmers to write reports. So if I can flow that level of data into the GL, then that liberates my users to be able to generate many more reports outside of the GL. And that's really the revolutionary item here, which is more access to the data using the tools that you're comfortable to use with. So two things I want to leave you with is dimensions are just like your sub-accounts or your segments within inside of GP. And now you have more power in reporting. So reporting by dimensions, you'll find them common throughout the system. As you see here, we've got an example of filtering on programs and customers or vendors. Employees, interesting. So I could track transactions by employees and flow that into the general ledger and do a report against all the activity coming from employees. It might be helpful. If I'm looking at spending of training programs by employee, I can do that now as a financial report in GL if I want to. There's this concept of building groups of dimensions. So the idea of having a dimensional value like a store location, and then creating a group called my Northeast group of stores, or my Western Provinces group of stores. Now, each store has their own location. I'm just creating a construct, a grouping of all these different stores that make the Western Provinces for me. And then I can do reporting off of either those groups or reporting off of the individual dimensions themselves. So very powerful concept and thought there. Dashboards are commonly used throughout both these systems. That is because the information that can be delivered, financial reports, approvals, cash balances, things like that, all can be presented up on dashboards themselves. So that means that I can build dashboards specifically to roles. So I may have a role of a chief financial officer that's interested in seeing things like the health of the organization. How am I performing this month versus last month at a snapshot, right? I may have another role of a controller. They're more interested in checking their cash balances of the cash account because they're monitoring that very carefully. I may have a role for a departmental manager. Their role is to just consume reports that we present to them, and we present them on the dashboard. So when they log in, they get a dashboard of the financial reports for their department against their budget. And because they're online, they can drill down into the details to be able to gain access. So what dashboards do is it gives us the ability to free up that accounting data to the consumers of that data, so that they can go and self-service their own questions about the performance of their department, their division, whatever it might necessarily be that they want to do. And many of our customers, in fact, use these dashboards to distribute out financial reports. And it's all online, so they can drill into the details. So if they see an expense that seems out of whack, they can drill in the actual AP bill. And because we've attached a copy of the AP bill and we have history of the approval, they can see that they approved that AP bill 2 months ago. And remind them what that cost is about. So all these systems provide dashboards. It's really about gaining access to the data that was previously locked up in your accounting system and making it available real time to the consumers of that data. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the future and where the industry is going. And this speaks a little bit about why GP and SL are being sunsetted. The first one is AP automation. So AP automation to me means how can I streamline the process of a bill? That means I receive an invoice from a vendor in PDF file format, and somebody's got to sit down and fat finger that into GP or SL, and then maybe it needs to go through an approval process before I decide it's okay to pay, and then I go ahead and pay that bill. So AP automation for us is instead of fat fingering in, we send that bill to an AP processor. It's essentially an automated program. Now that program is going to pick apart the invoice. So using OCR, it's going to look at the invoice, it's going to identify who the vendor is, and it's going to create an AP bill for that vendor. But more than that, it's going to figure out the costs that are associated with that invoice. And that program is then going to use its AI characteristics to go back and look at all the invoices that I did for this vendor in the past to see how I coded it in the past. And then it's going to create an AP bill with those accounts. So, whatever the expense account is or whatever dimensions I've done in the past with the amount of this AP bill. It's then going to attach that AP bill, copy that image to the AP bill, and then present that to me as a draft invoice. So what AP automation should do is increase my efficiency, meaning I don't have to key it in anymore, and my accuracy, meaning I probably 9 times out of 10, I'm going to code this expense the same way I did before. So go back and figure out how I coded it before. Now, there's a couple things going on there, right? There's the OCR technology, which you can't do in GPSL out of the box as a bolt-on product if necessary. And the second is then the AI intelligence that's reading into the data to look at the historic trends and figure out how you're doing transaction in the past with those vendors. These things we can't really do with client-server technology. Or if we could, it'd be very hard to distribute. But now that we have a cloud-based solution, we can distribute it fairly straightforwardly with each one of our customers. Now, one step further, these systems generally have mailboxes. So if you can get your vendor to send the email to the mailbox, then the mailbox will pick it up and it just shows up in your inbox as a draft AP bill that you need to process. So potentially, you don't necessarily even need to touch the AP bill. It just comes in through that engine and then drops right here. Now, there's some compliance testing being done here to see if it's a duplicate, and that's what I think we're seeing right here, that potentially there's a duplicate here. When it meets a vendor that's never done any business before, there's some setups that you may need to do to get it configured right the first time. But it's AI, it learns, it remembers. So the next time you get that bill from that vendor, you won't have to do this. So you do that stuff once. And so in that way, what AI is doing for us, what machine learning is doing is again, increasing our efficiency and our accuracy all at the same time. Now, here's a second concept that's driving our industry as well, and that is using AI for something we call a continuous close. So when we think about our close cycle, we perform our monthly transactions, we capture the information. At the end of the month, we go through a reconciliation process. We'll reconcile, we may make some adjustments, capture those adjustments, and reconcile until we're ready to complete and close. So one of our solutions is looking at this idea of eliminating the month-end close. Now, eliminating the month-end close is more aspirational than it is actual, but providing tools to help you increase the performance or decrease the amount of time it takes for you to do a month-end close is really what the goal of these tools are. And this particular tool is called outlier detection. What's interesting about outlier detection is it's real time, meaning as you enter transactions into the accounting system, this process is running, which I'm about to show you, and can help you correct mistakes as they happen, not later in the month when you run reconciliation reports and find that there was an error in the way it was coded, go back and fix it. So what does outlier detection do? Well, what it does is when you enter, in this case is a journal entry, it's comparing the accounts, the dimensions, and the amounts that you're coding on this line to the activities that you've done previously. And so if it finds a variation, meaning the amount looks really odd, it's a whole lot more than it's ever been, or if the expense account and department look kind of odd, I shouldn't have a marketing expense in the consulting department. That seems kind of odd to me. What outlier detection will do is it will notify the person who's doing data entry that this seems to be an anomaly. This is an opportunity for the user who's doing data entry to stop, take a look at it, either confirm or correct that entry. And if they can correct it now, that's one less thing I need to worry about at the month end when I do closing, right? That's the first thing. Now, sometimes you may not have done this transaction historically, so the way it was entered by the user is correct. And they're going to say, yep, this is new, but this is correct. Please learn this. And you tell AI to learn it, which it will. And then they submit this journal entry to whoever's going to approve it. Now, the person who approves it is also going to receive a notification that this was detected as an outlier. So the approver gets notified that, hey, this was detected as an outlier, but the data entry person confirmed it. It looks good. You might just want to take a second look at it and confirm that. And when the approver then approves it, then the journal entry posts. AI remembers that. And next month, when that entry comes across just the same, AI is going to pass it through its outlier detector, and it's going to go off for approval without any anomalies noted. So if you think about that, what we're doing is we're taking the process of identifying errors from the back end, when we do the reconciliation, and we're bringing it up to the front when it actually happens. And so therefore we can allow the person who's doing the data entry to correct that when it happens. And if they do that, then the level of trust of that data should increase. And that means when we get to the end of the month, the number of things that we need to do would be smaller because we have a certain level of trust of the data that's already been passed through AI and has been already identified as being similar to transactions done in the past. Someone once described it as it's almost like a report that says, yesterday you did 100 transactions. 99 of them looked like everything I've ever seen before, but this one is really interesting. You should take a closer look at it and let me know if that's right or not. And so again, what automation AI is doing for me here is it's increasing my accuracy and increasing the amount of time, my performance, amount of time it takes for me to do month-end close. These two are examples. There are many more. There's bank reconciliation features where we're automatically reconciling and creating transactions coming down from the bank that to improve your bank reconciliation process. But these all put together are designed to help improve your performance and get you to a point where the month-end close is shorter than what it used to be. Now, again, Sage, in this case, is a Sage calls it a continuous close or eliminating the close. I don't think we're going to eliminate the close. But if I can reduce the amount of time it takes to do a close from 10 days to 5 days, 5 days to 1 day, whatever it might necessarily be, that means I can get that information into the hands of my consumers, the people who are reading those financial reports, much quicker, and they can make a course correction, whatever they necessarily need to do, much faster than waiting for 10 or 15 days to get financial reports about what happened last month. And that's always the rub, right? Is that, our financial reports always tell us about what happened in the past, not what's happening right now. There's one other thing about that that comes to mind when you think about it. So if I get to a point where I trust the data because the entries that I'm entering in have been reviewed and approved, not approved, but just reviewed by AI and outliers have been detected, that means that data could potentially be presented to the end users in a sooner time frame. And what I mean to say is at some point, we might get to a point where we trust the data in the middle of the month because our processes are identifying all outliers and we're getting them corrected before. And therefore, users can consume that data during the month and help better predict where they're going to be at the end of the month. Again, these are all aspirational goals, but these are the things that are driving our industry and how our industry is changing. Again, we can't do that with client-server technology, which is why SL and GP are being sunsetted. Really has to be done with next-generation technologies. So we talked a little bit about fast path to the cloud. That is, this is the approach that we take, taking this approach to get you to the cloud. And again, it's a methodology where we do discovery, we document where requirements are, we then set up a prototype, and walk you through that, and then train your users, give them time to test and get comfortable with the software, and then go ahead and go live. And again, we are GP and SL experts, so we are in an ideal position to understand how you have configured and using, how it's working, how it's not working within inside of GP or SL, and how we can then adapt the next generation technology to meet whatever those particular needs are. So again, we think now is the best time to transition. For those of you who are in SL, there's a little bit more urgency. Again, SL is not going to stop running. It'll continue to run. We'll continue to support it, but no 1099s this year. So we're going to figure out another way to do that if you need to do that. Would you be using web-based applications to do that? The clock is really running. We're only going to have security updates for a couple more years, and then the software will not be updated on a secure basis by Microsoft. So now's the time we think that you should consider to move to the next platform. Not sure what is the right solution for you? Of course, that's what we're here for. So both products we think are industry-leading products. Both products we've worked with many times in the past. Some products are better fits for some organizations than other organizations, and we're here to help you navigate that pathway to determine what is what's the right product for you. So reach out to your customer account managers, which you know and love, Angela, Michelle, Marion, or ask at Quisitive here, and we can start that process in helping you determine what the next step is for you. We're going to pause now to take any questions you may have. And I think Michelle, my commentator, is going to organize that for us.
Yes, thank you, Jeff. So as a reminder, if you have any questions, please go ahead and enter them in the question box on the GoToWebinar menu. And I am looking through those right now, Jeff. Let's see. So one of the questions here is, how quickly can we get started to migrate to the cloud?
That's a really good question. So typically it takes us about 4 weeks to get ramped up and going with the new implementation. Sometimes it can be shorter, sometimes it can be a little bit longer, but typically think 2 to 4 weeks or so. The typical implementation for these systems run anywhere from 3 to 6 months. And it depends on what feature functionality you're using and want to use in the new system. We can accelerate that if need be. So we've done some implementations where clients have gone live in 1 or 2 months. And we do that by reducing the number of objectives for go live, meaning we're going to bring certain functionality up when you go live and other functionality we're going to add after you go live. So we sit down and work with each client to understand their business cycle, what is the best time to do so. And then we work out an implementation methodology and a timetable that would work best for both us and for you and us and be successful.
Thank you, Jeff. Let's see here. Another question, how much data can we bring over?
That's a really good question as well. Thank you for asking that question. Typically, clients look at a minimum of 2 years of historical deal data to bring across. They do that to be able to do trend reporting. So comparing year to date in the new system to prior year to date, which would have been in the old system, and or trend reporting like 3 years ago, 2 years ago, 1 year ago, and the current year to do trend reporting. And so that's the typical implementation or typical data conversion for our clients. We have the ability to bring more historical data. And when we sit down with you to determine what the value of that would be, we can determine how much data we might necessarily want to bring. So for example, we have some clients that require 7 years of historical data. There's no question about it. And we can bring that across if need be. There are options for you beyond that 2 years of data, which we normally do, and that is your GPRSL system can stay up for an extended period of time, and we can help you keep it up. We do have a private cloud where we could help you move to there if you wanted to, where it's our responsibility to keep it up and running for you to do historical queries. The short answer to that question is 2 years is the standard. But we can go back as many years as you necessarily need and want to have online in your system. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. Let's see here. I think I see one other question. How long will Quisitive continue to support our current system?
Another good question. We intend to support both GP and SL as long as we practically can do so. But in the foreseeable future, for the next 3 years, that won't be a problem. With GP, that runway is a lot longer. So, GP, we're looking at 2028. So we will continue to support you for as long as we practically can do and efficiently can do a support of that. So no worries about whether you're going to lose support today or tomorrow. That's not going to happen. We're going to keep our promise of supporting you as long as we possibly can. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. I think that is all the questions I see entered today. Just a reminder, if we missed your question or if you have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to any of us and we're happy to get those answered for you. And with that, I'd like to thank everyone for joining our presentation today. And if you have any questions or if you'd like to see more information on either of the ERP solutions that Jeff presented today, we're happy to help you with that and help you evaluate a migration to the cloud. Thanks again for joining us and have a great day.